Welcome to Jacksonville Inside and Out. Today we're talking with Melody Shacter. She's running for City Council in District 1. Today on Jacksonville Inside and Out, we're talking with Melody Shacter. She's here to talk about her district, District 1, the Arlington area. And before we do that, why don't you give us a little bit about your background? How did you come, what brought you to Jacksonville?
What brought me to Jacksonville? Well, I graduated from college in Tampa, and having grown up in Illinois, I escaped the cold. And after graduating, I actually got a job with the United States Football League. I don't know if you remember that league. It was sort of the in-between league.
Yeah, USFL.
Yes, exactly. In Houston as at the startup of their team. And so I worked for them for a year. And my boyfriend was the PR director. And at the end of the season, they asked him to go to Denver. So I went to Denver with them. And then at the end of that season, they took a hiatus. And they weren't sure if they were going to start back up or not, and so we were fairly close to California, and I said, I've always wanted to live in LA, so let's go to LA. So that's what we did. We went to LA. We were there for about a year, and then the USFL was going to start back up again, and the Jacksonville Bulls asked him to come to Jacksonville, and so I ended up in Jacksonville, actually by way of the kind of United States Football League. And then my first job here was actually I was kind of familiar with startup. That was really sort of my background. I'd done that in the various cities that I had lived. And the Jacksonville Business Journal was just starting up. And they hired me as their first business manager. So I had the opportunity to get the Business Journal started up, and I worked for them for 2 years. So that was a lot of fun.
And you've been here ever since?
I've been here, that was in 1986, and I've been here since then.
So that is a very common Jacksonville story. Either the military brings you in, or
right.
something brings you in.
Something brings you here.
And you never leave after that.
Yeah.
It's
a great place to live. So why would you want to live? The cost of living was, especially compared to Los Angeles, the cost of living was very good. You've got the beaches, and it was just and when I moved here in the late 80s, it was really a very happening place. If you remember, there was a lot of things going on downtown.
I got here in 94.
Okay, so you got in here after that. But the Riverwalk, they had just built the Riverwalk. The Landing opened in 87. It was called the Harbor Masters, which was the big restaurant downtown, opened. So there was a lot of the young adults. There was a lot of really a happening scene downtown. So it was very nice. It was it was good to make the transition.
Right, and we're starting to see that with Art Walk and things like that.
We are. There's definitely a renaissance of that, which is great.
And now you live in the Arlington area. I'm guessing this is a newly created district, sort of.
Kind of, sort of, yeah. I mean, all the districts I think got resorted,
right.
Which they do every 10 years or so. And so my district is everything north of Atlantic Boulevard. We've got the river on basically the west and the north side of the district, and then the Hart Bridge, and then the east side of the district is 295. So it's a very compact district.
And there's a good mixture of people in that. There are some poor parts of that district, and some more middle and upper class areas in that district.
I would say we have everything that you're going to find in Jacksonville, except for maybe our one billionaire that we have. But everything else you're going to find right in Arlington. We've got the riverfront, so we've got riverfront, and we've got sort of semi-gated communities. We have some very poor areas of town. In terms of the mix of people, I would say that everybody that lives in Jacksonville, we have that same mix in Arlington. And even our topography is very mixed. We have over by Regency, we have sort of the sand dunes, sort of the flat sand dunes, and up on Fort Caroline, we've got all these beautiful hills and beautiful oak trees. So it's really, it's a beautiful area of town.
What are the big issues for Arlington specifically that you see?
Well, I would say that, probably like a lot of areas of town, crime is an issue that we've got to look at and contend with and come up with a plan. And then redevelopment. Arlington was sort of, you think of it as maybe the first suburb. They built the bridge in the 60s and Regency, and Arlington was that new, place to be, and was the place to be in the 60s and 70s. A lot of people you'll talk to grew up and went to Terry Parker.
Right.
from the Arlington area, and it was the place to be.
I live right across the street pretty much from Terry
Terry
Parker.
Parker.
Yeah.
So, you know, I mean, the houses of the mid-century modern homes are just fantastic in terms of architectural design and very specific to our neighborhood. And so, you know, but as everything, the city grows, and as the city grows, you know, think people start moving to the suburbs, and you know, and you see people moving out of that area, much like what happened to Springfield has been happening to Arlington. And so now it's time for us to reinvest in Arlington, to come up with some ideas and you know, bring it back to what I call its former glory.
Right, right. but keep some low-cost housing too.
Oh, well, you've got to have,
Yeah.
you know, I mean, I think that's what makes Arlington, I think, is what makes it so fantastic, is that you have everything there. And that's what makes a real community.
Right, right. Now, as I recall, Arlington was the heart of the silent film industry, or one of the
It
big.
was, yeah, and we have Norman Studios right there in the heart of Arlington, which is great. And I don't know if you're aware of this, but once a month they do a silent film, which they do over at Tapestry Park, and that is just so much fun. And so I think, you know, that's bringing some recognition, and the people who've worked on that project have worked very hard to bring that to fruition. So there's still a long way to go with that, but it's definitely has a history of its own.
So you came to Jacksonville in the mid-'80s. I came in the mid-'90s with the Navy. So how much has Jacksonville changed in that time since the mid-'80s?
Well, in some respects, it seems like we've taken a step back because we were really moving forward, I felt. And so I guess maybe it was sort of came to a lull. I was talking to someone the other day, and I said, you know, I guess maybe it was all of us who got married in the 90s and had our children, and we all went home and raised children, and, you know, we weren't out, you know, downtown and going out and you know, requiring restaurants. But over the course of the last 20 years, we've basically doubled in size. I mean, I think originally when I moved here, there was about 400,000 people, and so that's a huge influx of people to an area. So we've seen a lot of growth outside of that sort of core ring, all the suburbs that have grown out of that. So it's, you know, the city looks very different than it did.
Okay, and we'll be right back with more of the interview with Melody Shacter, who's running for City Council District 1. Welcome back to Jacksonville Inside and Out. We're here with Melody Shacter. She's running for City Council District 1. And I understand you have some business background aside from the Jacksonville Business Journal.
Yes, right. When I left the Business Journal in '88 and founded a company called Home Companion, which was originally started out as an elder care homemaker service. And I built that company to be the largest private duty home health agency in Northeast Florida. And when it was about 10 years old, Mayo Clinic bought it from me. And then I ran it for them for 4 years as their director. So that was a lot of fun. And then that year, my husband, who is a home builder, you know, it's not good enough to have one entrepreneur in a family. You've got to have two to keep it, you know, keep the level up. And he had a heart attack, and I needed to step into his business. And so I stepped into the home building business. So as I say, the only thing they had in common was home, the word home.
Yeah.
But I found that one, I'm just good at business. And that I can really see the big picture. I can create a plan, and then I can tactically implement that plan. So when I stepped into his company, he was building about 90 homes a year, and the first year I doubled our profits, and within 3 years we were building about 230 homes. And then we sold that company to a company called Dries Homes in 2005, and Dries asked me to stay on as president. And I really, at that point, I had been working, you know, 6 and 7 days a week, 11 hours a day, and we had 2 young children at the time. And so I agreed to stay on for about a year and a half with Dries and transition the new management team in. And so I did that. And then I was able to really retire and spend some time with the kids. I homeschooled my youngest son through 7th, 8th, and 9th grade, and that is not something I would recommend. But it turned out really well. He's in college now, and he's a great kid. But I was able to then get very involved in the community, which, when you're trying to balance, kids and work, and it's really hard to do too much community activity. But I was then able to get back into doing that, and did several things in the Arlington area with the Arlington Community Garden. Worked with Tree Hill to actually implement that garden. Which we grew. In the garden, we grow food for the Arlington services, which is terrific. I think over 2,600 pounds of organic food has been given to the food pantry from that garden so far. And worked very much with the Arboretum. I'm on their development committee. And then got involved in some other things, maybe more sort of steering committees and board levels. Very active with the Women's Giving Alliance. Our focus the last several years has been mental health. So we spend a lot of time. We are able to donate about a grant. We have grant money of about $300,000 a year. So it's pretty significant now.
Now, if you win this seat on the city council, because mental health is actually kind of a big issue. It's a big issue with the homeless community. It's just a big issue in general. If we had better health care or better mental health care in general, we'd probably see less homeless people to begin with.
Yes.
So what
what could we do?
Yeah, what can you do?
Right.
What can the city council do?
For one thing, just a little background information that you may not know is that out of the 50 states, Florida is number 49th in terms of money that's allocated for mental health. So we're pretty close to the bottom. And out of all the counties in the state of Florida, Duval County gets the least amount. So we're pretty much the bottom of the barrel when it comes to funding, state and federal funding for mental health. So I think therein lies a lot of the issues. One, I think that some more funding needs to be allocated to the issue. But then in talking with, I've gone to various panels. I've listened to several different groups of people about mental health and the mental health professionals. And what I've learned is that the funding that they do get is often the most expensive kind of funding. In other words, rather than giving an organization that provides care for mental health, they may give them those dollars, but then they say they're only good for people who are in a facility. Well, that's the most expensive kind of care, right? That you can spend your dollars on. So it's one, letting the people, the professionals who do this for a living, letting them have the flexibility to do what they know is right for the people that they're trying to get help for. Additionally, that money is also very much in silos. And so these various organizations don't have the opportunity to talk to one another. So being able to sort of break down those barriers and get them together as groups, even with a little bit of money, they're able to make it go a lot farther, because rather than just sticking in their silo, which may be addressing the same kind of issues that these are being addressed over here. I think one of the women that I was talking to said, I have money to deal with children and children's mental health issues, but children's mental health issues often come from their parents.
Right.
So I need to be able to look at the entire family, not just the children. So I think those are a couple of things that we could do that would make a big difference with, honestly, not even adding a tremendous amount of money.
And a lot of the mental health issues come on later in life to begin with. So I would think that children with mental health issues would be a much smaller pool in general, just because usually it's not until your late teens or even early 20s that things like schizophrenia or things like that would actually start becoming a problem.
I think if you to actually take a look at some of the people, for example, that are homeless, you will find, especially the women, almost every single woman who's homeless has had some sort of mental health issue earlier in life, and that was brought on by usually abuse and neglect. And they end up on the street. So even though their mental health issues may show up later, they were caused early in life.
Right.
So it's really being able to address all of those, from the children all the way to our senior citizens. So.
And to segue into the homeless situation, where do we come up with a solution for the homeless I've heard people talk about, what they did in Houston and what they did in Utah. I mean, where do we come up with a solution that doesn't just move the problem?
Right. Well, I think that, what you said is one of the things that we always have to do is let's not reinvent the wheel. Let's look at other cities and see where they've been successful and pull from pull from other cities. So, let's look around for all the various issues that we have and say who's been successful in addressing this issue and what did they do? And not just pick a little piece of it, but look at the holistic piece that they brought to the table and see if that's not something that we could implement here. So, I think that would definitely be the way I would address it. Where have they been successful? And let's look at that.
All right. We'll be right back with more of Jacksonville Inside Now in just a few minutes. Welcome back to Jacksonville Inside Now. We're here with Melody Shacter. She's running for District 1 City Council, my district. So it's only fair to talk about a few issues that
that are important to
you. They're important to me.
Absolutely.
And one has to do with the Veterans Administration. The VA has no hospital in town. They have 2 clinics in town. But for example, I'm supposed to have surgery. I was supposed to have surgery. I had to cancel the surgery because there was no their ride service to the Lake City VA hospital. Is run by volunteers. So if there's no volunteer that day, you don't get to your appointment that day. So
that seems really strange.
That sounds really strange.
Yeah.
Now I understand this is more of a federal issue.
Yes, right.
So the question then becomes, how do you get people like Corinne Brown and Andrew Crenshaw to sit down and discuss this issue that is important to so many people in Jacksonville?
Right.
And how do you fix that problem?
Well, I think that's exactly what you said. You really have to sit down and talk with them and get them to understand. I think that's where you would want to rally up a group of veterans and go down and make an appointment and go down to their office and explain to them. My guess would be that they are not aware of this. I was not aware of it. So I would imagine that there's a very good possibility they may not be also. We had talked earlier when we were not on air. We mentioned that the UNF, what used to be called SHANS, but now it's UNF Healthcare, and part of the challenges that they're having with their funding and not getting enough funding from the state and state funding getting possibly reduced, which they cannot have. They handle our emergency and our indigent care. And maybe that's some kind of a solution is
find a way to partner.
Is partnering with those 2 hospitals exactly, and being able to, like we were talking about mental health earlier, you've got these silos. It's breaking down those silos and sort of pulling some of those resources together, and maybe that would be a step that nobody's thought about before.
It just sounds crazy to me that they would cut funding to a hospital that already has like 2 and 3 and 4 hour waits at the ER just to get seen.
Right. Well, one of the challenges that we have as a city, because the city budget goes towards the hospital, is that we have so much of our budget now being eaten up by the pension issue that we've got. And so now we don't have money to deal with and handle some of these other very pressing issues. So we've got to get the pension issue solved so that we then have some money to be able to look at some of these other issues.
Well, how do we address that issue? Is it a revenue issue? How is that?
With the pension? Well, it is first. There's really kind of 3 legs, I would say, to that issue. One is negotiating the actual all the details behind the pension. So those things are in the process right now, and it looks like we're about to come up with a deal. So I think they're going to get that done probably before this next council comes in. But I'm not sure that they're going to get the funding issue resolved. And the funding is, we've got a $1.67 billion unfunded pension. That's a big nut to crack. Yeah. And right now it's only 39% funded. So they really want to see it 80% funded. So how do we get money into that? fund. So, they're looking at a variety of ways. The JEA putting in 120 million. There's, I think, 61 million in a fund that set aside funds from the fire and police. There's a possibility. There's the possibility of, increasing taxes or ad valorem. Matt Carlucci and Mr. Appleby, I think his name is, they have a possibility, which is really kind of a borrowing funds.
The tax issue is a hot topic. It gets a lot of play, but what people don't realize is anytime you lower taxes, you end up increasing fees. You end up increasing fees like more people get tickets, more people get this or that, and the fines for all these things start going up and up and up, and the police stop dealing with crime and have to deal with traffic because they're trying to fill a budget.
Right. I mean, we have this situation right now with the police not addressing traffic problems on state roads. So, for example, my son got into a car accident on Atlantic Boulevard, and he had to wait until we had a state police come out. It was 1 o'clock in the morning, and it was 2:30 before they got out there. So, because there's just not enough local police to go around. So, some of the things they have to rejuggle to make it work. So it's important that we get the pension issue resolved so that we have money to pay everyone. And as my father used to say, you get what you pay for.
Right. So, changing gears, the HRO was not passed last time through. I've talked to a few people about it. Omega Allen, we didn't get to that subject, but she is definitely not in favor of that. Raymond Day came out very much in favor of that. Mayor Brown won't answer that question at all. Where do you stand on that?
Well, that one's an easy one for me. When I came out first thing with that. So if you go to my website, you'll see that is an issue that I'm in favor of. I just feel that there's no reason to be discriminating against anyone, and not only in this day and age, but in this city. So
you would support a comprehensive one that includes a transgender community as well?
Yes.
And is there any way that you can? Raymond Day made a suggestion that they create a job within City Hall, notary to perform marriages, since the clerk of the court is refusing to marry anyone anymore. Is that something that you would support, or?
I'd have to take a look at that. From what I understand, when they built the courthouse, they actually built a room so that people could do this. So it seems ridiculous to me that people cannot use that room. So now they're not doing any marriages, and we have a room that was set aside for that. It seems to me that if that's the law, that you need to be able to live up to the law, or maybe it's not the right job for you.
Yeah, ultimately, I think what we end up having to do is vote out the clerk of the court. I think that's the only real remedy, because he doesn't have to do it. So, but it's something that every clerk of the court has done for ever.
There is a precedent for it. Yeah, there's no question about that.
Okay. And finally, Jacksonville Transit Authority, there have been a lot of changes lately. Costs a little bit more to get around sometimes now, but it does seem to be a little bit more efficient. It seems to run more like if you look at the map, it looks more like a New York subway map than it used to.
Well, the fact that it hadn't changed in 30 years was mind-boggling to me. I mean, I know we have a new head. Nate is the new head of the JTA here, and he comes, my understanding is he comes from San Francisco. So he comes from a city that has a lot of mass transportation options. And when I decided my platform, mass transportation was actually one of the issues. Because I feel like, especially in Arlington, we have so many people that need jobs and need to get to jobs and can't afford a car, right? And there's a lot of jobs over in town center that need workers, and we've got to get the two together. Right. The bus system now, oftentimes stops at 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock at night. Well, if you're a young person and you're just getting your job, you're a low man on the totem pole. If you're working at a restaurant, you're not getting out of work until 1 o'clock in the morning. How are you going to get home?
Right.
So we've got to have a system that accommodates everyone. And I think we're on the right track, but I think we definitely need to look at that. And I look at Regency and I think, it's so centrally located to north, south, east, and west. Wouldn't it be a great hub
Right.
and bring a lot to Arlington?
Right. All right. Thank you for watching Jacksonville Inside and Out. Early voting starts, today, Monday. It runs until the 24th, and
22nd.
The 22nd.
We take a day off, and then the 24th is election day.
24th is election day, but you can vote up until the 22nd, and then the 24th will be the day that I vote, mostly because it's right near my house.
That's right. And I hope you've made your choice on who you're going to vote for.
Not all of them. I've not made all my choices yet, but I've made some of them.
Terrific.
So, all right, thank you for watching. Have a good day.
Yeah.